एक मिनट रुक जाओ, रेडी होने दो. चलो ये कर लेते हैं. दिस कुड बी अ ग्रेट इंट्रो.
Hi, I'm Akshay.
Hi, this is Saurabh, and you are listening to the Founder Thesis podcast. We meet some of the most celebrated startup founders in the country.
And we want to learn how to build a unicorn.
How do you raise great kids? Well, many times it is by doing something as simple as making kids play outdoors. This was the thesis with which our guest today started and built up a company over a decade and a half. In this episode of Founder Thesis podcast, Akshay Dutt is in conversation with Saumil Majumdar, founder and CEO of Sportzvillage, and they discuss some amazing concepts like lazy success and how to scale up a serendipitous idea. Here is Saumil talking about his time at IIT Mumbai.
But otherwise, I think one other two things that I felt since you asked about the IIT experience, I think is relevant across. One is on the sports side. Let me give you a data point. I was in the March. I was selected for a March badminton team in 9th, 10th standard, and then 12th. After 12th, I got into IIT. And I must say, actually, I thought I was the cool dude, right? कि मतलब मैं तो academy कर लिया, sport भी कर लिया, मैं तो एकदम champion. And I could not get into the IIT Bombay badminton team at first.
It was very competitive.
I could not get into it. That's how good people were. And I thought that I am one of the few cool dudes who's doing acads and sports. And what IIT told me was, not really. There are a lot of other people who are able to balance academics and sports and do it better than you. And to me, that was a very interesting insight. That the rhetoric around sport has been, if you do sport, it's at the cost of academics.
Yeah.
That's not true. That is, in my mind, an excuse that kids are making and parents are letting them make. Because if you really want to do it, think about it. Now, you can. You have enough time to pick up on your academics.
That's a pretty good insight.
Right? And people are doing it. So I mean, whenever people tell me कि यार academics, sports कर रहा है, academic, I'm like, why? I mean, I've seen the best of best minds, play the best of best sports and still find a balance. Of course, they sacrifice other things, right? Of course, they don't do everything else, but they just pick these two and they are like as good as they can be. So it's possible. What we want to do is also hang out with friends, also watch movies, also, and then say, well, actually, my sports कर रहा हूँ, तो मेरा academics खराब है. I don't buy it. Because the same athlete, I'll come to that. The same athlete who's able to work so hard at getting a shot right, getting the run right, getting the technique right. It cannot be that he or she does not have the willpower to apply to this problem of cracking a maths problem. It's an application issue. It's not an ability issue. So this is one, which is that sports and academics are not mutually exclusive. They can both coexist. The second one was really I got exposed. Well, three things maybe. Second one was I got exposed to this notion of lazy success.
What do you mean by that?
So lazy success is you achieve a success but do it with the least effort possible.
Are you saying this as something to be aspired for, or are you being critical of lazy success? I mean, to you, lazy success is
no. I think it's a fantastic thing that you just think so much and find the easiest way to do the least and achieve the most.
Okay, which also I think is called path of least effort.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I don't know those words, but yeah, to me it was just lazy success because I could see people around me कोई लेक्चर अटेंड नहीं करेंगे, कुछ नहीं करेगा, सडनली वो एग्जाम से 2-3 दिन पहले 2-3 फंडे जो कोर है वो क्रैक मार देगा कि यार ये समझ गया ना तो बाकी तो समझ गया. And then they would crack the exam. And they're like, shit, man, you've been studying the whole year. And this guy just spent like 3 afternoons. So which of course means that they're very smart, right? But they're also able to really focus on the essence of the problem. Right? It's not like they're winging it. It's not like they're gaming the system. They really understand better than you, but they understood the core very well. And you are sometimes just figuring out the periphery. So lazy success was another very interesting thing. But I think very often we over-glamorize.
Did you master it yourself? Lazy success?
No, I'm trying. Not yet. I mean, I try to do it. Sometimes it works. But the interesting part of lazy success is that you think so much about the problem that you try and do it with the least effort. So I do to be a bit immodest. I do think that I achieved the same amount of I won't call it success, same amount of outcome with maybe 30-40% less effort than everybody else, right? And which is in some sense I think the IIT. I'm not saying it's exclusive to IIT. I just learned it. And the last part is the joy of solving a juicy problem. I think that thing that man ये problem to solve करना है. So the last part the third part was the joy of solving a really juicy problem. You know, there used to be this notion called EP, ego problems, that we used to use the phrase in IT. That यार अभी EP हो गया कि इसको तो solve करके रहेंगे. So then you would stay up all night, you would do all kinds of stuff, but solve the damn thing. And I think that sense of, I don't know what to call it, a sense of I will solve it, and that confidence that you will figure it out. It might take time, but you will figure it out. Just stay at it. Just stay at it. You will figure it out. And that probably has been the reason I'm still in Sportzvillage, building Sportzvillage for 17 years. Yeah, this problem of getting kids to play and building a good business is such a juicy problem to solve. It's such an important problem to solve. This is worth solving. Why can't I solve it?
Now, let me come back to the business in a more chronological fashion. Um, and I'll come back to the same question again. For now, let's park this. But I want to kind of reach there as as a part of your journey. So in IIT you had like a bunch of insights which you told me about. Why did you then decide to, or again, as you said, it's not always a choice, but why did you pursue an MBA from IIM Bangalore? Like what? Why not look at working?
So this is more a career. This is more a career conversation, right? Because a lot of the career choices that at least we made were really about what we don't want to do. Like in 10th standard, I didn't want to do biology and Hindi, so I took, science. मतलब it was really क्या मुझे नहीं करना है. It was not मुझे करना है. My elder brother went to IIT, so I was like, what the hell, I can do IIT. So I also, right? And I didn't want to do medicine. So it was very clear कि medicine नहीं करना है. I had heard of something called IIT. I had gone and spent a summer with him there. I liked the idea. Hostel में रहने का ना, but so some of the decisions are not really. There's a really long-term plan and all that. In my first year at IIT, second year halfway, I realized that this is not what I really want to do. And then it became tricky because you worked so hard to get into that very institute, and now you're like, you don't want to do this, right? And like, okay, now what? And that's when I heard about something called management. There's something called management. This basically is not engineering. It's not core engineering where you learn engineering at IIT. And it's there's something called marketing and something called finance and sales and all that. And you work with people, and I like that. That sounds interesting. I mean, it was more I don't want to do the engineering, so what else do I do? Because 95% or 98% of my batchmates gave GRE as I did and went abroad. I and a few other batchmates gave our CAT and stayed back. We were a very small percentage of people who stayed back. So it was really what I didn't want to do of engineering, and CAT and management became the next thing that seemed to make sense. So therefore,
I guess you must have also discovered that you're good with people, because being a sports techie means a lot of dealing with public, dealing with people kind of work.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, frankly, us time par how much analysis of these kind of things. A lot of these are post facto analysis, to be fair. As they say, in hindsight, everything is strategy. But, at that point, it was just serendipity, just figuring stuff out and saying, okay, let's go down this path. But yeah, I mean, it just made more sense.
And in IIM Bangalore, you had like the regular kind of an approach that, most people look at an MBA as a placement institute, that I'm joining this so that I get a good job. So was that your approach also?
Of course, we wanted a good job, but I was like, I was really impressed with the kind of people that, like I was in IT, the kind of people who were around me. And now suddenly you're getting people who are from an arts background, commerce background, science background, not just engineering background, who are tremendously smart, but smart in a very different way, right? And beyond a point, in IT there is a certain way of thinking beyond a point, right? There is a certain amount, and suddenly you meet So that was a very refreshing experience. So yeah, I mean, it was frankly, I think that age when you're doing engineering MBA, I think you're figuring yourself out as to what you want to do, and you're just going down the path of what, like I said, what you don't want to do, you're avoiding, and then trying to maximize from what you are willing to do. And that's it. Yeah, I mean, I don't think I had any grand strategy, and I mean, as I remember one of my conversations with one very senior industry leader when I had between my two startups, I thought I'll go and do a job for some time. And he looked at my resume, and he looked at my resume and said, "Saumil, you seem to be getting into these right places, but once you're inside those places, you're not doing much because my grades were not very good." So I was like, yeah, that's a good observation. I don't know. Maybe it's a personality that once I feel कि वो crack मार दिया है अभी, I don't have anything else to prove to anybody else. I don't know. Some of these are difficult rationalizations. But to your question, I was like, let's give it a shot. And in the beginning you're competitive, then you realize what the hell wrong is so competitive, and I was back to my. But to your question, maybe if I may preempt your question, I never thought I'll be an entrepreneur
Okay.
when I was a man. Not even once. Not even once. I never thought I was an entrepreneur. I don't think any of my batchmates, though now they tell me that we knew you would be an entrepreneur, I don't think at that point anybody would have said that. I was very clear. I don't keep not even again.
So you joined Wipro from campus, I am assuming. And what were those almost 3 years you spent there? So what was those 3 years, and what was the trigger to quit Wipro?
So, I mean, I must place on record. I think Wipro was a great experience. It was a great place to start my career. I think it's a tremendous place to learn some, core lessons on integrity and value and so on. I was also very fortunate that my boss who hired me was also IMP Illinois. He interviewed me, and I ended up working with him directly. Purushottam. He was very senior to me. We should have had like three people between us, but because we're part of a new initiative, I was working with him directly. So I learned a lot. I learned a hell of a lot in the first 2 3 years. And so I spent some time in international marketing business in the first year and a half. Then I spent some time in domestic sales, selling PCs to Canara Bank and Vijaya Bank back in 98, 97, 98. And then I was like, अच्छा next. Then Wipro, the standard career would be कि तुम तो hardware time में करो, then you do software, then you go abroad. And I was like, this is not what I want to do. Just didn't sound, I don't know, maybe juicy enough. Like, there must be something better. And that's when this whole thing of entrepreneurship, started seeming very glamorous. Yeah, yeah, interesting. Hai. And I had a few friends, or friend of friends who were entrepreneurs. So I used to spend time with them. कि क्या करते हो कैसे करते हो and it was very fascinating but I had no clue will I ever quit. I had got married just then so to your question I think it was really the reason I quit Wipro was there's a why not, right, as against why, right? Why not always makes life a lot more interesting than why. And like why, right, and why not is a lot more expansive, a lot more liberating. Why is very constraining, very sometimes लाइक क्या होगा नौकरी छोड़ दोगे 1 साल करोगे नहीं चलेगा तो वापस नौकरी तो मिल ही जाएगी मतलब what the big deal. So that was really the way it started and my wife was in Wipro at that time so we said ठीक है घर तो चलेगा and see entrepreneurs like us who are entrepreneurs by choice as against entrepreneurs by because they are forced to be entrepreneurs which many of people are uh, always have the safety net की नौकरी तो मिल जाएगी one. Second is very rarely do you do a big capex business कि तुम बड़ा फैक्ट्री लगाओगे 200 करोड़ चाहिए very rarely you do a service business and you're just starting something and pretty much don't need anything, right? You just work harder and sweat smarter. That's probably the best you can do. And that's what I did. I had this very simple idea called Learn at Home where I used to send people to train people on computers at home.
This was like a long-term training or like short-term course to learn computers?
Short term, simple MS Office. Like remember what you just asked me before you started the call. कि आपने ये किया क्या ये a lot of people don't know how to answer that also, right? So just helping people use computers, MS Office, internet, email.
What NIIT was also doing at that time, they also had this.
But NIT used to do it from a hardware and a engineering objective. Okay, NIT was not doing it from a usage objective. And the reason it started was my mom wanted to send me an email, and I told my dad, "आप सिखा दो." He said, "नहीं नहीं मैं नहीं सिखाऊंगा. You come fly down. I'll pay you to fly down from Bangalore to Bombay, and you train her, and I'll pay you." I was like, interesting. There's a market here. But on a serious note, people are struggling with computing power. People are struggling with using computers. And I thought that I'll just send people to their homes, learn at home. So that's how it started. Let me pause there. So that's how my journey started. Really, why not? Really, and this problem I faced because in Wipro, very often I would be the friendly tech support guy, right? See, a lot of the tech support till that time were hardware tech support. तुम्हारा पीसी नहीं चल रहा है, तुम्हारा इंटरनेट कनेक्शन नहीं चल रहा है, बट तुम एक्सेल में इसको प्रिंट कैसे करोगे किसी को नहीं पता है. द नेट टेक सपोर्ट क्या वोंट नो, राइट? तुमको वर्ड में तुमको मेल मर्ज करना है, किसी को कोई पता ही नहीं है सब. Right? The tech support guy is not configured to handle that. The actual usage of the computing power. I mean, the reason you bought the computer was to use the damn thing for your objective. And there was nobody supporting you for that. They only supporting you to keep it running. So I would fool around myself. I would say, "Kaise ho raha hai?" I would read up help. I would do some stuff. And I would figure it out. So I would become the informal tech support guy saying, "Arey, isko पूछ ले, वो कर देगा." So I realized that maybe there's something here. People are struggling with computing power. So I think that's how it started.
But it doesn't sound like a very profitable business. मतलब आप घर भेज रहे हो बंदा तो उसमें कितना फिर बचेगा आपके लिए, and you can't charge very exorbitant amounts also if you want to scale it up.
So we used to charge 750 rupees for 4 hours of training back in 1998. Okay, and people used to go home, and so of course, like always, I had this thing ki itna karenge with lifetime value, we'll sell something else, the usual stuff. Yeah, this time per the plan to it, but yeah, it was not scalable, but it was the business that made sense to me, and I just started it. And then as we started that, I also started worrying about scalability, kaise hoga, and I found that after I trained somebody, that person, I had 3-4 people working with me later on. That person would email me saying, "आपने मेरे को सिखा दिया MS Office, internet वो भी है, but a printout ऐसे हो नहीं रहा है. Can you over email send me instructions?" Because he or she knew that if I send my guy, I would charge them fund or so. And I would say, "ठीक है यार, मतलब." So I would write email like 1, 2, 3, 4. ऐसे click here, click here, click here. Pretty much help 101, right? And I said, interesting. So I went back to Wipro and said, "Look, you're selling PCs. Why don't you bundle a email support pack into your PCs, home PCs? And whenever customers have a question, they can email right to me and I'll reply over email." Okay. So that certainly took away the physical part. Then I started looking at that. I was talking to this friend of mine who is now a partner in Sportzvillage. G2 was in KP in the US. कि यार मैं ऐसे कर रहा हूँ, 200 रुपया per annum मैंने चार्ज किया विप्रो को वो ईमेल सपोर्ट के लिए. तो he said, "तो ईमेल सपोर्ट कर रहा है, पीसी कर रहा है, प्रिंटर कर रहा है, तो अमेरिकन के लिए कर, इंडियंस के लिए क्यों कर रहा है? 200 रुपये का $200 मिल सकता है देखो." I said, interesting. Right? So that's when we got moved to what we started a company called Q Support. We were one of the first remote tech support businesses. Later on, we called BPOs. But back then, there was not even a word called BPO in 1998, and we started Q Support. We had 100 people in Koramangala, in BTM layout in Bangalore, 24/7 tech support for companies out of Chicago, San Diego.
So your friend was doing customer acquisition and you were doing service delivery.
No. He was just a friend. He just advised me saying,
नहीं तो कस्टमर एक्विजिशन कैसे किया आपने यूएस कस्टमर्स इंडिया में बैठ के?
we landed up. We had an office in New Jersey. We had an office in San Diego.
How did you get the money to set up an office? And
we raised angel funding. We raised angel funding. Raised seed funding. Raised VC funding.
but how did you वो पूरा मतलब यू अंडरस्टूड ऑल दिस कॉन्सेप्ट्स कि अच्छा मुझे ये बिजनेस खड़ा करना है तो मुझे पहले फंडिंग उठानी है, मैं फंडिंग इस तरीके से उठाऊंगा, लाइक वर यू लाइक दैट अवेयर एट दैट टाइम, या लाइक हाउ डिड इट एक्चुअली?
No, but then see that's the thing, right? I mean, the good news is that the problem that most of us face 99% of the time, somebody else has faced it in life. You're not facing it for the first time. 99% of the time, 1% might be very unique to you, but आप जो problem face कर रहे हो कोई और face कर. So I would just reach out to the network and figure out यार ये इसमें क्या होता है, right? And there are people who are willing to help. So one big learning I have had in my journey, I'd say that people are wanting to help, not just wanting to help, but somebody has to ask. The problem is nobody is asking. You will find find that if you go out and ask for help, the floodgates are willing to open. Nobody's even knocking on the door with of course sincerity and not wasting my time and also nice obviously hygiene things, right? You should be sincere and you should have done your own homework and everything else. But after you've done your homework and you're struggling with a problem, then people will say, "अच्छा, इसको ना ऐसे solve कर, ये कर ले, बस हो गया," and suddenly you're done. So I was fortunate to get a lot of people, a lot of entrepreneurs, investors, friends, senior colleagues who maybe thought that I was sincere enough in this problem solving that they also helped in the way they could. And I'm trying very hard to pay it forward. People reach out and wherever I can I help.
So you raised funds and you set up like a 100+ member BPO unit, like a pioneering BPO unit. Then what happened? Like, why?
I made probably the biggest mistake of my life, and I listened to a piece of advice that I shouldn't have listened. I mean, I've got a lot of shitty advice, but this one I listened. And the advice that I listened to was, Saumil, you have set up the company, you have got the early customers, you have raised funding. Now you move on and do something else. Let somebody else run this company. This is in the middle of the .com bust, okay? And like I said, I heard a lot of shitty advice. This one I listened to, and I got carried away by this thing of serial entrepreneur ki ek shuru kar liya, dusra karenge, and all that nonsense. Okay, the shittiest piece of advice anyway. I keep telling people not to go down this path. But so what happened with that, Akshay, was there was a time when the business was not obviously doing well because .com bust and Dandaniya and all that. But we still had enough revenue. Of course, we had more than revenue ka cost because we are trying to grow. But we are not a zero revenue company, right? So what we should have done, what I should have done, is I should just cut all my indirect costs so that my indirect cost is equal to or less than my
And what
gross
were
cost.
the indirect costs?
Mainly people and some travel and marketing and sales. Yeah.
Well, you had become flabby as an organization, you're saying.
Right.
Like you could have.
Not flabby, we were designed for growth and the market just tanked. No, this is a .com bust. I don't know
Yeah,
if you
yeah, yeah, I
thought
remember,
one
yeah.
before that.
Hmm.
The market just tanked. So we were designed for growth and suddenly the market tanked. So I should have just cut my costs. Instead, I chose to step away and hire a CEO and say, "Tu chala."
Okay.
Now, what happens with that is, and that's again, and that's the biggest mistake I've made in my life. But what happens with that is, everybody's baby is nobody's baby. So there are investors, there are board members, there's a CEO, there's a core team, and everybody is thinking for himself only. The CEO is thinking about his next job, core team is thinking about the next job, investor thinking about the portfolio. They have 1 in 10, right? Their success, and maybe you're not the 1 in 10. So this baby is nobody's baby.
What was your stake in it?
I was probably at 15-20%. But I think it's not about ownership stake. It's not an equity issue. I think it's an ownership issue. I think let's distinguish the two, right? It's an ownership issue. It has to be somebody's baby. And somebody is to say, "To baju auto, main dekh raha hu usko," right? And that person is always, in my mind, I mean, not always, let me correct that, is the real co-founder or founder. That could be somebody who joined yesterday, okay? It could be somebody who joined yesterday, not somebody who started it 20 years ago. But if that person has the ownership to say, "You know what, I will take care of this," while everybody is figuring out their next steps, right? कि मतलब मुझे नौकरी कहाँ मिलेगी नहीं, right? Somebody has to say, "This is my baby," and at that point, I was not there. I made a mistake, and finally, long story short, the company shut down. And within 15 months of the company shutting down, there were 1,000 to 2,000 people, tech support
Right.
people.
Yeah, around 2002, the whole boom started with GE and yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and I remember Rajesh Jain coming to our office when he was after the India World, he sold to Sifi and he was an investor for Sifi. And I remember him asking me, "Saumil, Wipro is India's largest IT company. Wipro के पास 35 टेक सपोर्ट के लोग हैं और तेरे पास 100 है, कैसे हो सकता है? Tell me the business logic." वो राजेश को लगा, "राजेश बात तो बराबर है, I can't argue with it, but something is यहाँ कुछ तो है. What you're saying is true. It's just data, right? I can't argue with data. But यहाँ कुछ तो है, कुछ तो बनेगा इसका." I didn't know BPO at the time. That word didn't exist. But यहाँ कुछ तो है. Now I should have just stayed with it. So my biggest learning into Sportzvillage, or even not even Sportzvillage, into when I got out of that, and of course it was very intense. Failure is very intense in sense experience, and our education system doesn't prepare you for it. I was not prepared for it. I have never failed in my life. I've done reasonably well, barring some girlfriends here and there. Generally, you've done reasonably well in life. But, and then suddenly you have this thing where failure is stark. You can't negotiate with this failure. Company बंद हो गई. That's it. I mean, you can't negotiate with it, right? You can't say, oh, by the way, know this, by the way, know that. And that's when I realized that I should have just stuck on with it. So I had a few key learnings. One was that if what you're offering fundamentally makes sense to a consumer or to the market, fundamental, and that's the biggest if, then just wait for the right time when the market wave happens. And when the market wave happens, like from 100 became 5,000 people BPO, you will also get carried by the market wave. You don't have to do anything smarter. But as an entrepreneur, you can only make the market wave. Well, you cannot make the market wave. As an entrepreneur, you can stay alive, right? You can only convince investors to invest in you, convince startup, your co-founders to stay along, convince the early team members to stay and they have hold the belief and all that, right? Market आएगा जब आएगा. Market doesn't care how smart you are. Market doesn't care how well you are funded. Market doesn't care what degrees you hold. Market will buy when the market is willing to buy. So therefore, this notion of which I think is the most powerful weapon that we have but we never use is a thing called time. So I told myself, whatever I choose to do next, I will give myself as much time as required. I will take my time to figure out what it should. But once I commit, as long as it takes, take time, right? We'll solve the problem. And again, with the fundamental proviso that if what you're offering makes fundamental sense, then the model will emerge.
So in that 2001 to 3 period, like when you heard the advice that you take a back seat and do your next venture, what was it that you were doing at that time then?
I felt that, so I thought of myself as a tech entrepreneur actually. So I thought the reason the business didn't work as well was because I did not have my own relationship in the market in the US in the tech business. So I said, let me build my own tech relationships. So I found I found a job in the Bay Area where I was managing partnerships for Ethernet switching software company for with Intel, Marvell, and all these guys. It was an Indian company, but I was managing the partnerships. I was in the Bay Area, in the tech world, and I was networking with people and meeting people. So now मैंने किया, but I couldn't do it beyond that, and I quit. So my wife and I sold our stuff in Bangalore. We moved to US. We bought stuff in the house. We bought a car. And 9 months we stole the stuff in the house, sold the car, and came back to Bangalore. I just couldn't do it. I just needed the entrepreneurial. I just had to be on my own again.
Okay, well, you had tasted blood in a way, so job was
These are they're very colorful, metaphors. Maybe it is. I don't know. But I know that I was extremely restless. I was just not at peace. And my wife said, look, what's the point of being in the US if you're so restless and not at peace? And what happened though on a serious note was I did spend time in the US trying to find start a company and all that. So I went and met people. That's what you normally do, right? As you think your ideas and what you do. And as I met people, I found everybody asking me about India. And I would introduce them to this, introduce them to suddenly, and it's everybody was latching onto my Indian network. Well, I was in the Bay Area asking for ideas to do in the Bay Area. And so I asked myself, मतलब क्या हो रहा है? If the value that I have is in India, my network is in India. Should I be starting a venture in India? Why am I doing it in the Bay Area? So as an entrepreneur, the only thing you bring to the table is the ability to sweat smarter, your credibility, reputation, therefore your network, right? People are willing to pick up the phone and call. People are willing to put in a word for you. People are willing to open the door for you. Or Mera network was in India. So I said, let's just come back to India. So we came back. We had no idea what we were going to do. But we said, India mein kuch to karenge. I joined a friend startup to help him some early time. But I was very clear over time I'll do something on my own. Yeah, so then I was again I thought of myself a tech entrepreneur. I kept thinking of ideas around technology and internet and all that stuff. And this friend of mine, Jay Shankar, and he was with me in Q Support, my way venture. And so my earlier the tech support venture was called Q Support. And so Jay and I were together at the time, and so he and I were fooling around with ideas. तो whiteboard पे कुछ कुछ कर रहे थे. We spent a full afternoon. कुछ मजा नहीं आ रहा था. As we were leaving that room, Jay said, I wish there were more places for kids to play. So I said, I didn't have kids that time. So I said, why? What happened? So he said, मेरा बेटा Siddharth, who then was 6 years old. Siddharth now, by the way, is in IIT Kanpur. Time flies. So Siddharth मुझे खेलने नहीं जाता. I said, क्यों नहीं जाता? बेटा जगह ही नहीं है खेलने को. He will talk about Bangalore. I said, जगह नहीं है मतलब? उसे वहाँ जगह नहीं है. बाहर मेन रोड है या तो फिर कहीं गाड़ियाँ पार्क है या तो जहाँ पे ओपन एरिया है वहाँ पे कचरा पड़ा हुआ है, सेफ नहीं है, ग्लास टूटा हुआ है, कहाँ जाए खेलने को? I said, okay. Then he said, oh, social skills भी खराब हो रहे हैं, दिन भर टीवी देखता रहता है वगैरह वगैरह. I said, okay. I didn't have kids, so I could not relate to that pain. I said, okay. So he said, I wish there were places, safe places for kids to play. I said, okay, I like sports. I said, tell me more, what do you think? So बोला, Bangalore में, I don't know if family Bangalore, there are a lot of these 30 feet or 40 feet plots. They're all lying idle. As part of the layout development, they do plots. 30 by 40, 40 by 60 around. So सब खाली पड़े हुए हैं. They are all become dump yards. Right? So he said, I wish let's go to the owners and tell them कि हम आपका plot को साफ कर देंगे, घास लगाएंगे उस पे, और फिर वहाँ पे बच्चे आएंगे, पेरेंट्स के साथ खेलेंगे, 100-200 रुपए देंगे, वो चले जाएंगे. And like that, we'll have a network of sports, network of grounds or safe spaces all over the country. जहाँ की बच्चा can just walk from where बच्चा and parent can just walk from wherever they are, they live, and go play and come back. That's when it like just clicked for me. I said, wow, this sounds interesting. And I just jumped onto it. Completely serendipitous. And this friend of mine in IIT, when I was working for GRE, this friend of mine wanted to help me understand, you use tricks to remember words, right? Because you remember so many. So he said serendipity को याद करने का तेरे को trick बता दूँ. The serendipity is when you're looking for needle in a haystack and you find the farmer's daughter.
Okay.
The question is not that you found the farmer's daughter. The question is, what will you do now? Right? Are you going to still look for look for the needle? Are you going to do something more
Right.
interesting? What happened with me was just that. I was looking for needle in a haystack and disappeared. And serendipity always presents a choice. You could listen to it or ignore it. Fortunately, I chose to listen to it. And lo and behold, 17 years have passed.
So, how did you start it off? And you started with Jay only, like both of you together?
Yeah, actually, originally Jay and I started, and Jay and another friend Jitu. This is the guy who I told you was in the US, KPMG. So he's also from BARC where I grew up childhood, and he's also been a big sports freak. He's an entrepreneur, so actually he said I'm in. So three of us started. Jay moved out within the first year or so, and then Jitu and I are still continuing.
So, like this, you executed the same idea you discussed, talk to property owners and make it into a playground?
Yeah, that was the idea, and we thought that we will set up our own first place so that we can prove that look, it works. But we again rented a place from a landlord in Bangalore, and we had no money.
So you had no money. Then how did you actually execute the idea?
So we went out and raised money for friends and family. And in hindsight, I think we probably did a very smart thing, which is that it was Jay's idea, not mine. Which is that we went and said to a bunch of our friends, "यार 1-2 लाख दो." This is 2003, okay? 1 lakh, 2 lakh दो, ज़्यादा मत. So we raised around 35 lakhs from 15-20 people. Now, the reason it was smart, well, obviously we took our time to figure out the model and we could return the money and so let's see, if I had taken 50 lakhs from you, Akshay, in 2003, you would have been sitting in my house for last times. Right? Whereas if I had taken a lakh from you, lakh and a half from you, you're like, ठीक है, मतलब, at worst you're writing it off, right? ठीक है, first of all you're trying to do something. Worst case, ठीक है, मतलब, 1.5. So in hindsight, not strategy again, and maybe Jay's strategy to be fair, it just worked for us. It just took away the time pressure from it, right? So yeah, that's how we started. We had a ground in Bangalore, and we thought we'll have a network of Sportzvillage across the country, in every zip code of the country. Partnering with real estate guys, by apartment complex guys, school owners, after school. It was all meant to be after school evenings, academy.
And then, how did the business evolve? Like from running your own to, I think eventually it was more about schools as your customer. So how did that evolve?
So yeah, when we started out, we were meant to be a noun. We were a noun. Now we are a verb. So a noun is a place, right? We're meant to be a set of places. Sportzvillage, when we started out 2003, was meant to be a place. Now we are a verb. We are a service. We deliver a program. We don't have our own place at all. We partner with schools. We partner with academies. We partner with brands, CSR donors, government. But we don't have our own place at all. We don't have a single place.
So, how many years did it take you to figure out that you need to be like a asset light, जो आज के लिंगो में है, asset light model?
ये सब words हमने सुने नहीं थे. ये सब बाद में, these are all outside in world. You are asset light, or you are asset heavy. That time we just trying to figure out a bloody model है कि मतलब पैसा कैसे बनेगा. Asset heavy or asset light or बाद में. So So 2003 to 2008 was our huge experimentation phase. And remember, in hindsight, we call it experimentation. At that point, every experiment we did, we felt was the one. यही है, ये चलने वाला है, ये चलेगा. Of course, it चलेगा. And every time we had Excel sheet where we would become millionaires in like 18 months. And right. So I think the issue is around. We thought that we'll get access to real estate everywhere. That didn't happen. So then we went to apartment complex thinking वहाँ पे करेंगे. That didn't work out. Then we tried to hire a small hall for small kids to play. That didn't work out. Then we tried to sell tickets for the World Cup. Then we tried to do two sports tours. Then we did build an app. Thinking this is back 2008, social media. This is before Facebook and Twitter, which will help people to find other people to play with and all that stuff. तो फाइट तो बहुत मारा है. Like I said, it's a juicy problem to solve, and we're like solve करेंगे इसको. And then finally in 2008 end is when I said, look. So one thing that did work to a small extent was corporates and sports, where corporates were using us for some HR team building, some events, some intra-corporate employee engagement, so as a sales promotion, so marketing budgets. It's like a sports event management. That became one part of our business. Okay. जहाँ कुछ कर रहे थे हम लोग. Over time, of course, we became very large in that. But that is the starting point, pre 2008. And but that was still not, in my view, a sustainable and scalable way to get kids to play. It was very episodic. Events by definition is right. So I said that is important, but that is not solving the problem we wanted to solve. So I kept looking. So Jitu kept focusing on the event side, and that's how we divided our work also. Jitu focused on the event business because he felt passionate about that as a revenue stream. And I said, yeah, that is not solving the problem that I wanted to solve. Let me still keep looking for solution. So we configured the business different way. We created multiple entities. He had a higher equity in that entity. I had a lower equity. We did all kinds of stuff so that there's freedom. Otherwise, kya hota hai, you are just there's not enough happening, and you're kind of fighting more than doing. So we said, okay, let's align, but let's go our own ways, and then figure out in the future how do you come back together. And so I tried a few models, app and tickets and everything else, and finally in 2008, I decided to knock on school doors. And frankly, it was just another of the idea. It was not like, and we said we will. But one important thing we said is we will not do after school academies. We'll do in school program. कि आपका स्कूल का जो पी क्लास है वो आप हमको आउटसोर्स करो. After school academy चला नहीं था. So one important thing that I realized, and again maybe some of my education background is to give credit for that, is कि वही गलती एक बार कर ली, वो गलती फिर से नहीं करनी. अब नई गलती करेंगे. But the after school academy didn't work in 2005. There's no point going in 2008 and saying again after school. So I remember meeting some school leaders in 2008-9, and they said, "Ha, good idea, Mr. Saumil. Why don't you start with the after school academy? And the next year we'll see in school." And I would say, "No, sir. After school, I don't want." And they would look at me and say, "Pagal hai kya? I'm giving you a chance to do after school academy in my school. You're saying no." And I would say, "No, that just didn't work." And so that was one piece that started getting some traction. Of course, it was tough. We waited outside principal's cabin for hours, not met, not even then not got a meeting. We tried to use our degrees to get a meeting. We did all kinds of stuff. But slowly we felt that we did have a model which had a unit economics, which is of course profitable at a GM level, and a large addressable market, which, as you know, are the two criteria for any scalable.
Okay, so in a year, you like how many schools did you sign up in that year? Like 9 to 10. 9 you started this, so
10 या 12 school. 10 या 12 school. And that's when Seed Fund, which is early stage fund, Bharti Jacob, Praveen Gandhi, Mahesh Mukhi, they invested in us. And Bharti Jacob and Praveen Bhai had invested in my earlier venture in Q Support also. So they knew of me as an entrepreneur. And, they made the mistake of giving the same entrepreneur again, and I made the mistake of taking the same investor again. But they were kind enough to invest, and that's how what was called Edu Sports started separately as a brand with the company. And that kind of we were able to raise money for, because that model was scalable. And parallelly, Jitu ran Sports Consult, which was the events marketing, what you call experiential sports marketing business now, where we work with brands and leagues and governments to do large scale events, again to help them achieve their goals through sports. So that both of those journeys continued, and then 2015, Gaja Capital, which is in the private equity investor in India, they invested in EduSport. They bought out all the older investors, and that's the time when we kind of brought the sports consult business together again. While it was at arm's length, we put it all together, and we said, okay, what do we call this combined entity now? Because otherwise it was EduSports and Sports Consult. And I said, look, earlier it was Sportsvillage. Why don't you just call it Sportsvillage? So now again, this combined entity got formed because of the Gaja Capital investment, and it became Sportsvillage 2015. Now we are.
So tell me about the unit economics that you figured out that this is making sense. Like, what was your pitch to a school? What did you charge them, and what was your investment in delivering that?
So our pitch to school was sports is education. Do you agree or not? I mean, I'm saying it a bit rudely, but you say it really politely. You know, all that. And obviously people would agree. Yes, sports is education. And I would say, okay, if you think sports is education, then run sports the way core education is run. How do you run maths or science? You have a curriculum, you have textbooks, you have daily lesson plans, you have assessment for each child, you have parent interaction, you have a report card. The child is not doing well, gets more attention, right? All this stuff happens. But in sports, you're saying sports education, but in sports, you don't have a curriculum, you don't have lesson plans, you don't have a trained teacher, you don't spend time on the weaker kids, you in fact spend time with the smarter kids, you don't have a report card, you don't have a democratic way of assessing your program. So you're just saying sports education, not doing it. So they would say, okay, what do you have? We say, okay, we have exactly this. We have curriculum, we have assessment, we have data. So that's how it started. So we said, look, we are here to help a school leader deliver sports as part of it.
Like, how much time did it take you to get all these things in place? Like, did in 2009-10 when you were you pitching this exact thing, or this like took a couple of years to reach this?
No. It's all evolution. It's all evolution. It's all evolution. It's all, like I said, hindsight, everything is strategy. I still remember in 2000. See, when we first started, we thought we'll only be a training and consulting company. We'll not even have our own trainers delivering the program. Okay, we thought हम ट्रेनिंग करेंगे
train the
टीचर का,
teacher workshops.
टीचर क्लास करेगा, कुछ डेटा, हाँ हाँ वो कुछ डेटा कैप्चर करके हमको भेजेगा, हम डेटा पे एनालिटिक्स करेंगे और उसको बोलेंगे आप तू ये कर, and life will be good, and we will be like 5-6 people in the room, and we'll be getting hundreds of schools to play, and all is well. Now, I still remember one hot afternoon in Hyderabad, and I met this lady called Aparna ma'am, she's the principal of a school. And after making me wait for 2 hours, finally at like 3:30 in the afternoon, she called me inside and said, Mr. Saumil, I've seen your proposal. I like what you're doing. I said, very good. I said, look, order will drive. So, who will you send to deliver the curriculum? So I said, ma'am, who will you send? What do you mean? You have 5 PE teachers. I will train them. She said, no, Mr. Saumil, that won't work. I said, ma'am, you have 5 PE teachers. And till that time, we didn't even think about hiring our own team. Okay, we thought like hiring. So then after the 30 seconds or to and fro, she looked at me, I still remember, she looked me in the eye. I said, Mr. Saumil, I like what you're doing. I hope you succeed. But if you don't send your own trained staff, even if I buy the program this year, I can assure you that the books will lie in the library gathering dust. I can assure you it will not get implemented. And next year when the management asks me the question, I'll have to say, sorry, we can't do it. So choice is yours. And in that moment, I said, okay, ma'am, we'll send you staff. I had no clue how to hire staff. I had no clue how to train staff. I had no clue how to deliver it. But I could feel the customer, the classic early adopter saying, do this and I'll buy from you. That I like what you're doing. I see you're sincere. I like your product, but your product has this feature missing. Add this feature and I'll buy from you. And I said, okay. That meant a completely different business model from a technology consulting company to become a service delivery, right? Before COVID, as of March 31st, we had almost 2,000 people on our roads because we were running a program for 1,500.
So for each school, you would have like a couple of.
Yes, each school we would have a trainer, at least one. Some school we had 6 or 7 trainers. So we just morphed from a technology consulting company to a service delivery.
So this was in 2010 that you hired your first trainer.
2009. So to our question, the unit economics was curriculum, assessment, trainer, PTMs, events, sports days, and if the school was spending around 2 lakhs, 2.5 lakhs a year, with us they would spend 6.5, 7 lakhs. So we were were not a cheaper outsourcing model. We were a model to help them deliver on the promise that they were already making of sports and part of education, but not really delivering it, right? And of course, the context was that neighborhood playgrounds were disappearing. Therefore, parents did not have other options of getting kids play. Therefore, school became the only option. So, a lot of this is about timing, right? I mean, beyond a point, as I'm sure you've seen those studies, the largest determinant of success of ventures is timing, which is when in the market a bunch of forces come together that just sets it up for the venture to succeed.
So your monetization of a school, was it just the school only paying that 6 lakhs, or did you also have
Yeah.
like outside school hours programs for which parents would pay directly?
So originally we had only in school because we wanted to focus on it and get strong enough on it and build it. Then as we built further, we added the Cool Sport business as a partnership. We came together under Sportzvillage for the after school model. We had our own events and leagues on the weekends. We added sports tools. So the idea was that we help kids on their entire sports journey. Sports as a part of education is the fundamental, like physical literacy, after which there are different levels of engagement in terms of weekend participation, inter-school tournaments, talent, and so on. So the idea was to, as Sportzvillage, the idea was to help, how do we get 100 million kids to play, and not everybody needs to get better in competition every time. You could just play the same level and just have fun for the rest of your life.
Okay. And so where all are you present? Like, where do most of your customers, like
250 odd locations across the country.
But where are you strong in? Like, what are your top states?
Well, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, NCR, Punjab, Gujarat, Maharashtra. I think there are a few that we're not strong at, but pretty much we're spread out.
Okay. So I want to understand how you learn to build an organization. I mean, so managing 5 people, 10, 20 people, even up to 50, 100 people you had done in the past, although it was single location. Now you have the challenge of multiple location, 1 or 2 people per location, multiple states all over the country. So, how did you build this kind of an organization with such a remote, distributed workforce? I'm assuming there would be very little oversight on what a trainer is doing in a school, just because, I mean, you can't have like one supervisor to one trainer. And so, how did you solve this organization building challenge?
So one thing that helped us in construction, if you look at Sportzvillage, one part of it was the school business where the solution was actually the school itself. Because our program was happening in a very structured environment called the school. Right? The school had a timetable, the school had coordinators, school had supervisors. So we would also enable them with audit sheets so they could review themselves. So we provided the lesson plans and the curriculum to them. So that they could just open the book and say, "Aaj ye hona tha, ye ho raha hai." Right, so that was one. Second, of course, we had for 1 in 10, we had a delivery manager, we had a list manager for you. Second, we used fair amount of technology in the back.
Like, how did you build these people? Like, how did you build trainers? How did you build a delivery manager? These are not off-the-shelf resources. No? I mean, you can.
No, of course, we hired and we trained and we spent time.
As in, you like created an academy to train coaches and.
Yeah, well, academy is, I mean, we trained them. Academy, this academy, we go. But yeah, we trained. We went to office and we did the training.
So, what about your like middle management layer, like your state heads, and like how did you create that layer, like people who would probably be?
So in the beginning we centralized it. In the beginning it was centralized, so some of us would play those roles, and then over time we hired people. Again, in the beginning it was a lot of personal network, people who fundamentally had a managerial capability but need not have the technical capability or the domain knowledge. And now over time it's been a lot more domain knowledge, and even a lot of our, we spent a lot of time on the training and all that. A lot of our teams are actually homegrown. So like right now as we speak, our head of product for school started with the trainer.
Okay, so essentially like becoming a trainer was like a gateway to multiple functions and roles within the organization. Like you would.
Yeah, that our culture was that, of course, for meritocracy, but we said let's give our internal guys a chance first before you hire them out. The benchmarks are not going to reduce, but maybe some time might be given more. But if the existing guy can do it in 2 extra months, we'll give him a chance.
And how did you use technology to scale up?
So a lot of backend technology was not different because it was a very physical experience of getting kids to play. But we used SMS-based reporting in the beginning so that all the lesson plan execution was reported. We used an app to upload assessment-based data, assessment data. So see, to give you an example, if I do assessment 500 kids and our assessment had roughly 8 parameters, I would be tracking 4,000 data points per school per assessment, right? Into 100 schools or 1,000 schools, do the math. So suddenly the amount of data that's coming in, and then you're processing data to say last year क्या था बच्चे का improvement हुआ कि नहीं हुआ है, right? Fitness question क्या है, ski question क्या है, the usual analytics you would do on any of those data. So we developed it ourselves, and so that's helped us.
But like your trainers had like a mobile app or something where they could input data.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay. And so what is like the out of your total addressable market? I mean, maybe not every school would be a customer for you. What is your percentage reach? Like, how much have you penetrated?
No. See, this is a huge market, and we are right now at around. If I take private schools, we are at around 800 private schools. There are only CBSE has around 2,500 private schools. CBSE, ICSE around 6,000 odd. So there are like 3,000 of our schools. We can CBSE, ICSE, and we are like 800. Okay. Then if you add matriculation schools, state board schools, whole of schools, so that number of private schools is up to a lakh. There are 1 million government schools. So this market is not a market size problem. The problem is a market access problem, because decision making is trustee principles, take time, long time, all that. So now I think we have got fair amount of credibility. We've been around long enough. So now people think of sports, they do call us. So now the selling is getting easier. Pre-COVID, but yeah. It's the execution. Now we reach the execution problem. If you remember, I told you earlier, one is to figure out the model, second is scale the model. I think now we reach the problem of scaling the model. Model works, model is profitable. Now how do you scale it with least friction? So I'm trying to find a lazy solution to it.
And you're working with the governments also, like directly with state governments and all for their schools?
Yes. So there, yes, we are. We are government for the in-school program, school program, but also we are also a vocational service provider, VTP training partner for LHTC. So in 8 states, we run the vocational training program in 50 odd schools for PE and sports, where kids choose the 9th and 10th standard in the PE and sports education subject. Our trainers go deliver as well.
So, what do you think is the way to go from 1,500 to 15,000?
So I think the network effect at one level has to, and that has started to begin when pre-COVID was now. So a lot more schools are really looking at sports as an integral part of education beyond just the namesake stuff. So I think the real issue is access, and the issue is how do you get the parent community to demand a better sports program. So in private schools, the parents demand stuff will happen. The parents don't demand. Beyond the point, it becomes an option. And that's why I think this whole NEP is also aligned well. NEP is talked about play-based learning. So I think it feels like the timing is just falling right in terms of policy, in terms of parents' concern. Even with now with COVID, the whole health and fitness comes into the equation. And therefore, sports will become one thing now. But we are also trying to leverage across the academy business, across the brand business to see how can we get budgets of brands to help it with the program. How do you kind of find a way to build it into effect?
Sorry, you've not spoken about the brands business. What is the brands business?
That is the corporate part, right? The work we do with corporates. When it started the engagement, it is now over time evolved into helping brands achieve their business objectives of engaging consumers through sports and programs. So we do some of the largest youth sports programs. We part of India. We've done the Reliance Foundation Youth Sports. We've done programs in the doing program with brands like Milo and others, Scrabble, Matter. They want to reach out to the consumers. We design sports program, and again, there also the center of gravity schools. The schools provide a sustainable and scalable way and economical way to access skills. If you design a program which is integrated to education. So we're also looking at finding ways to align these two goals. Right? Brand want these kids in a good way. Or schools want to provide sports in a good way. Kids want the sports good way. They didn't want. Is there a way to connect the dots on the end? So early days, like CSR, we're doing a lot of work where we are convincing companies who are investing in education as part of the CSR objective. It telling them that add a layer of sports to their education investment so that the efficacy of their education investment is better. So that's also we're seeing a lot of traction there.
What is it that you are currently excited about? What is some interesting challenge? Like, of course, there's a bigger juicy problem that you're solving, but within this, what is like a at a more micro level, something which you are excited to solve as a problem, or something you're excited to learn?
So I think this COVID situation has created an opportunity of using technology and digital in a way that has never happened. And I'm trying really hard to figure out how do we use this to achieve the objective of getting. And towards that, we made a few initiatives. We have this notion of home visiting playground, and therefore we launched our own live interactive service called Active Club, which is a B2C service. We have a 2,000 odd paid subscribers on it where kids log in and get a live interactive session on multiple sports, fun, fitness, yoga, martial art classes in the home. You understand? For schools, we launched a play at home, which again directly live online classes to leaderboards. For schools to deliver health and fitness for their students. I think
Did you lose customers due to COVID? Because schools have been under pressure.
Yeah, a lot of schools. Yeah, yes. Lose, as in people have said, look, when things come back, we'll re-engage again. So we've kind of pause right now. But yes. So digital is to your question, how do we use technology and digital? Because this COVID, while it's a very big pain, has created this opportunity to use digital in a way that people are willing to accept today. And how do we deliver sports programs? So we're doing that with even during COVID time, our CSR programs are running in communities where we have limited access. So we found a way to deliver a physical model like offline and online. So a very interesting way of using technology and digital to still achieve the same goal of getting to play. Which before COVID we were a very physical company. But COVID has given us the opportunity to do a digital transformation. So that's really exciting. And hopefully that can then see once that works, you can then address the whole world. And as we speak, our active club customers are from some 7 different countries. So they found us and they're signing up with us. So suddenly the digital and the whole world can be an option.
So yeah, I mean, you had those years of like vanvas, I can say, in a way, where you were experimenting and failing and experimenting and failing. So how did you sustain yourself then?
So I think the way, like I said at the beginning, the time as the weapon that we don't value enough was one thing that. And once you remove, see, I think that in entrepreneurship and personally most founders, when they start out, there is this unstated time limit of 5 to 7 years. Right? It's very unstated. Very implicit. Nobody talks about it. But hey, now what happens with that is if your first experiment didn't work and you used up your money and you're getting to the valley of death, right? And then coming out of it can take 2 to 3 years again. Suddenly, out of 5 to 7 years, you used up 2 3 years, and then you only have 2 to 3 years left now, right? And therefore, you do something stupid. You either go and try and raise a ton of money, thinking that money can solve your problem, or you give up and say, "Yeah, anything around." All because of a very artificial notion of 5 to 7 years of like time required to build a business. And my view is that it takes 15 to 20 years to build something really valuable, right? So therefore, take your time to decide what you want to do. But once you decide, just stay with it. Now I'll answer your other questions: is how did we survive from that? The good news says that again, people who are entrepreneurs with choice. Once you decide कि यार करना है लंबा, then it's actually a cash flow problem, right? Because you need to find a way to run your house. So, and I have done this. I have done part-time consulting with friends. I have done That's the easiest way, right? And you can easily work for, let's say, part-time with a friend and earn enough to run your house and do your venture on the side. So I've done that. I have taken loans. I have diluted my equity. I have done all of that with the idea that I and my family should get a certain living standard, which I don't want to compromise. If that means at the end of the whole thing, I have lesser equity than I could have had. That's fine. The journey is equally important as destination. So once you think of it as a cash flow problem, then it's very easy to solve cash flow problems. Just do a part-time consulting or cut your costs. You can't go to Switzerland every second month. You have to go to Goa every year. That's it. Right? So it's not very difficult. And that's why it comes back to the main question of how badly do you want to solve this problem? How juicy is it for you? Right? And that, to me, that's a fundamental starting point. Right? If it's not juicy enough, when things get tough, you will end up asking the question, why am I doing this? And I think there is a notion of opportunity cost that works in all these conversations. कि market में इतना मिल रहा है, तेरे batch में जो इतना मिल रहा है, तो क्या कर रहा है, stuff, right? But there's also the notion that I think people should remember, which is this notion of opportunity cost of not doing. What I mean by that is not just the passion and the mother with apple pie, the nostalgia and following my dream and all that stuff. Right? But what I mean is that if you give it enough time, it's assuming again, we go back to the first conversation, assuming that you're offering something which fundamentally makes sense. Like in my view, getting kids to play fundamentally is a value. Now I have to find a model around it. It fundamentally makes sense, and you give it enough time and you keep experimenting, trying, you will at some point find the right model. And then at some point the market will come. When that happens, it might take 5 years, it might take 10 years, in our case taken 17 years, still work in progress. When that happens, all your opportunity costs will get more than compensated by that one product market fit when the market is coming. Because at the end of the day, opportunity cost takes some amount of salary every month into a number of years, right? But even if you, let's say, own 10% of a company which is really achieving this product market fit, and do the math, 10% of the valuation of the company, you will easily know the company in the capital gain itself. Apart from the fact that you start earning salary after some time and it's not zero, year at time. So therefore, the opportunity cost of not doing it is that you could have achieved your financial objectives, although with some delayed gratification, and done what you really wanted to do. Then why won't you do it, right? And my question to myself was that if you think we are so smart, and all of us think we are smart, then solve the problem without compromising on the opportunity cost. See, building a business while compromising opportunity is the easiest thing to do, right? I followed my passion, I earned one tenth of what I could earn, but I followed my passion. What's the big deal in that? If you're so smart, find a way to follow your passion and build a business and earn more than what you would earn in a salary, at least, or ideally, and make a ton of money. That is the problem you should solve, if you're so smart.
So that, of course, is everybody's dream. But what you said it's like it's what every aspiring entrepreneur has as his dream, ना कि मुझे मतलब फन भी चाहिए, पैसा भी चाहिए और नाम भी चाहिए.
हाँ, प्रॉब्लम है कि वो टाइम नहीं दे रहा, लोग टाइम नहीं देते उसको. प्रॉब्लम वही है. एंड द प्रॉब्लम विद टाइम स्कैरसिटी इज नॉट क्रिएटेड बाय एंटरप्रेन्योर्स, इट्स क्रिएटेड बाय द इन्वेस्टर कम्युनिटी एंड द नोशन की 5-7 साल में कर लो, अदरवाइज व्हाई आर यू डूइंग इट? बिकॉज़ फंड्स हैव अ 5-7 year survival window. Nobody's written in stone, no god has said.
In 2010, when you raised from seed fund, are they still investors with you? Have they had that level of patience?
No, they got to exit with Gaja, and now Gaja, of course, is on an exit. But remember, investors need to exit. You don't have to exit.
Right.
If you think you have no cash flow, and if exit comes, then of course that's a choice to make. But my point to you was that the time as a notion is a opportunity cost argument, and opportunity cost counter is opportunity cost of not doing it, and the base level cash flow is a easily manageable problem.
Yeah, sounds.
So think of time as the ultimate weapon.
Sounds easy when you say it, but I'm sure when you're in the thick of things, actually going through cash flow crisis, कि मैं rent कैसे दूंगा next महीने का type of problems.
This reminds me of this. I did this Nehru mountaineering course in 1995, okay, after my MBA, and so Uttarkashi mein hai NIM, and then we were learning snowcraft, icecraft, and all that. 18,000 feet pe camp tempo, and it's like -30 in the night, really cold, really freezing. Our instructor was a Sherpa called Marbu sir. Okay. ठंडे finally it was so cold and we went and sir ठंडा ऑफिस चलते हैं.
Okay.
तो एक दिन समय बगा लिया हमको. We दूसरे दिन सुना भगा दिया, तीसरे दिन बिठाया हमको और हमको बोला तुम जिधर से आया उधर फोम का मैट्रेस था ना? हाँ सर था। उधर गर्म पानी था ना? हाँ सर था। तुम खुद इधर आया ना? हाँ सर खुद इधर आया। So to your question, it's tough and all that, but we chose this, right? The easy job was there. You left an easy job for this, and now when it's hurting, you're saying, "Oh, it's hurting." Arey, medical, you came for this. So let me give you the next day again. We went a trip to Norbu, sir. Okay, again to complete the story, it's relevant to the entrepreneurship journey. And again we trip, sir. बहुत हो गया, हमने सुन लिया आपका बात, but not you. Then he said, better. तो बोला आसपास देखो क्या दिख रहा है? It's all white, okay? It's all white. Sir क्या है? बर्फ है. He said जितना देखना है देख लो. जब तुम प्लेन्स पे जाओगे ना तो फ्रीजर खोल के खरोद के खाओ। तो उसका ऐसे ही है, मतलब अभी दर्द हो रहा है बट व्हेन यू लीव इट यू आर लाइक मैन आई वांट दैट।
So that was Saumil telling us how he built Sportzvillage, one of the largest youth sports platform. If you'd like to know more, log on to sportzvillage.com. That's SPORTZ village.com.
You like the Founder Thesis podcast? Then do check out our other shows on subjects like marketing, technology, career advice, books, and drama. Visit thepodium.in, that is thepodium.in, for a complete list of all our shows.